going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with just a little bit of kind of like a thread-bodied scud today. I've got a Daiichi 1150. This is a size 10, so it's a little bit bigger. I've tied them down to even 14s, but I found I don't have the nicest camera in the world, and when you get really down to those smaller hooks and stuff like that, it's just not as clear of a picture. Again, pretty simple pattern today. I've got just a little bit of a tail here, a thread body, and then just a little red strip here. And this little red strip is a material I've never used before, and it's a great find. This bead is a Firehole 532nd in olive. A lot of Fireholes are just matte colors, so I say olive, but it's really a matte olive. And then I just finished this off with a little bit of Solares Bone Dry. So I'm going to put my fresh hook in there. Again, this is a Daiichi 1150, which is like a wide gap, continuous bend. I really like how the eye of the hook kind of comes flat instead of going all the way down. This is a lot of thread, and so I'm just going to use, this is just UTC in olive green, probably my favorite thread color of all time. Honestly, I've probably used more of this olive green than maybe black is the only one I could say. I do use white, but not a ton. This is probably my most used thread. So I'm going to go really far down into this bend. I want to be careful with how much my thread is cording up. So every once in a while I'll just give it a good spin, and then I can just try my best to do touching wraps all the way up. Now the tail of this, you could use traditional marabou for sure. You could, I mean, you can use a lot of different things to make this tail. I'm going to come back down again. I'm just trying to build up a little bit of a body, and it's just easier to build up a body with 140 denier instead of 70. So the tail of this fly is actually going to be just ostrich marabou. This is just olive. I think it's like hairline or something. Just olive ostrich marabou. You could for sure use just traditional marabou, which I believe is turkey. It's totally up to you. I just chose this one because it just happens to match this bead pretty closely. So I'm just going to trim off a little bit just so it doesn't get as much in my way. And you can make this tail as long as you want, as thick as you want. You can see that some of these are just a little bit long. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to kind of pluck off those really long ones and even it out as much as I can. Not a super big tail, and it really is going to thin out a ton. So if you want a little bit of a bigger tail, then you're going to want to put down more materials or more fibers than what I've got. I've tied quite a few of these up. I'll show you a couple at the end. And whenever I'm tying stuff like this, I just want it, some I'll do a longer tail, some I'll do a shorter tail, a thicker tail, whatever kind of floats your boat in that moment. It's just really tricky trying to get this. Again, I want to go pretty far down, so I'm just going to try and hold those materials on, and I want them to just be straight. So I can kind of just come like that, and then I can work my way up and kind of mash these down and just build a little bit of a body coming up to my bead. I didn't put down any lead or lead-free wraps. I definitely could have, so I'm going to end up having to do a few more wraps than maybe I would prefer, but it's totally fine. I mean, I'll just build these up. I'm not worried about You know, if this was a slotted bead, I'd be a little worried about getting that bead kind of centered in place where I want it, but this is unslotted, and so this thing can rotate as much as you want and it's not going to do anything. Now, the little red strip that I showed you before, a lot of fly tyers go to all these different craft stores and stuff like that. There's a lot of great videos on great materials that you can find really cheap, making your own dubbing and stuff like that. I've got this, the brand I'm guessing is Pop, P-O-P. This is stretch cord. Again, got this at some craft store. It comes in like 6 different colors. I don't even know. I can't remember how much I bought this for. I've had it for a while and I've never really used it a ton. I've used it for some bodies and stuff like that, but I haven't used it a bunch. But this stuff works awesome. I tried using vinyl rib, and I'll show you one of the vinyl ribs I did. It just didn't sit as well on the top, and it was just a little bit thin. I didn't have a red. I think the only size I had was midge, and it was just a little bit thin, and this ended up being a perfect size. So I just cut like a 2-inch strip, and I'm actually gonna come up pretty far because this is what's gonna add a little bit of body to that. So I'm just gonna kind of give it some tension after I get it wrapped down, and I'll just try and center this as much as I can, and you just work your way down to your tail. That should be good. Now, before I invest too much more into this, I'll kind of just look at the top, and I can just kind of pull it and make sure that it's going to be centered. That looks good enough for me. So I'll uncord my thread, and I'm just going to build up this body. I need this body to pretty much just be as thick as that cord, just to give it something to sit on, really. I don't want it, I want this to be a circular bait, and so I'll come down pretty much down to the end. Again, I'm going to be uncording my thread a bunch, and this body doesn't have to be super duper perfect, but you want to look nice. And if you want it to be a little bit thinner, I'll just build up some by this head. If you want it to be a little bit thinner, you can absolutely do that, and you can get some midge vinyl rib. You know, if I'm tying this on a size 16 Scud, then maybe I will end up, you know, going with something smaller and thinner and stuff like that. But this is actually, especially the last couple years, I've kind of gone smaller and smaller in terms of the kind of baits that I use, especially in the winter. You know, sometimes that the bite can be so tough that you end up downsizing, and then you catch some big fish on super small stuff, and you think, well, I should just always be throwing small stuff. So I always make sure I have some smaller ones, and I'm just babbling on as I wrap these. I could have skipped this, I guess. So that probably is going to be good enough for me. Just, you want it to be tapered a little bit. I really just, this is a bigger bead, and so I wanted to make sure that it didn't look super goofy. Sometimes if you have a big old bead on the front and a thinner body, it looks a little goofy. So I'm just going to give this some tension. Slippery stuff. I'll give this some tension, and I'm just going to center it right on my hook eye. And I'm slipping as I do this. It's slippery, so you got to be careful. So I'm going to just get a loose wrap, and I can just pull on that. And again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you want it to look nice. I want to look like I kind of know what I'm doing, I guess. And I'll just get a couple good wraps there. Maybe that's a little bit too far back. And I'll get a couple wraps there. Maybe one more tight one right on it. And I'm going to come in here. There's a couple ways you can do this. So I'm going to trim this off. I'll give it some good tension. And I'm going to come in as close as I can. And there's a little bit of a red sticking out of there. A couple of them I've actually left that little bit of color. It's kind of tricky to hide it, but I've preferred how it looked just with a little bit of a collar that wasn't the red. So I'll just whip finish this off, maybe 3 turns, 4, just to get that a little bit more even. And I'll trim this, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my Solares, and I'm just going to kind of cover this. You can gob this stuff on all you want, but really it adds so much, not flash to it, but it just adds a nice little shine to it, and this green actually looks really pretty. Should have done a better job whip finishing. This thread it looks really, really cool under this bone dry. And I'm just putting a tiny bit on to start. I can always add more. It's really hard to take this stuff off once you get it cured. So I'm just going to build up a little bit of a body. Just a warning, when you cure this, make sure that you don't have your bottle of UV sitting next to you. For sure put the cap back on. I know it's a black glass bottle, but that the UV doesn't care that you're not trying to use it. So you can see I've got a nice little body now. I'm just going to add a little bit more up here just to get this a little bit thicker up there. And I can kind of just zap that as I go. It cures pretty quick, so I just want to see maybe a little bit more. And that stuff, this is pretty tough stuff, so that red little band isn't going to go anywhere. It'll at least let me catch a few fish on it before it starts really losing it. But that's really it. I know I've been talking a lot in this video, but you can pump these out pretty quick, and it's just a really cool kind of hot spot, hot back bait. And you can tie these in a million different colors. This one's a bit bigger, a bit of a thicker body with a little black strip on there. This is Glow Bright thread with all black on it. You could do all white. This one was the one that I put some vinyl rib on. So you can see it's just a little bit of a thinner strip. I left that little tiny dot there. Again, that's kind of splitting hairs. This is a little bit of a bigger tail too. So again, you just mess around with sizes and lengths and all this stuff, and you can really fill up your box pretty quick. Quick pattern, simple, easy. Keep it simple. You'll catch fish on this thing. I've already got stuff sticking to it, but Junior's Fishing Company, like and subscribe. Drop some comments below. We'll see you on the next one.